This is Gemara Menachos, Daf Yod, and we're holding on. The bottom of Testament B's, the two dots, approximately 10 lines from the bottom. If anyone would like to sponsor any of the shiurim, please feel free to reach out to partner in spreading Torah b'siyata dishmaya. We're holding 10 lines from the bottom. Kamatz bismol, as we quote the Mishnah that taught us, Kmitza avad has to be done with your right hand. If you do Kmitza with your left hand, it is Basel, says the Gemara, the classical Kasha. Minani, immediately, where do we know this? What's the Mikar? That Kmitza has to be done with your right hand. When you offer the mincha and you fill up, and you fill up your kappa, your palm from it. What is the kaf? Is the kaf your right hand, your left hand? When the Torah says the kohen takes the look Hashem, the look of oil, and he pours it al kaf hakohen, and the kaf of the kohen has smallest. So he pours it on the kohen's left hand. So kan here, smallest. So what do we see? That if the Torah, when it articulates the left palm, it says left palm. And when it articulates palm, what does it mean? Well, not the left one, it must mean that's what we know, it means the right hand. Frek the Gemara, wait. Maybe we need it for it itself to show us that by the oil has to be placed dafka on the left hand and not on the right hand. And maybe this is bidafka by the mitzaira, by the placement of the lug shemen, that we have a clear directive where it shall be placed. But how do we know that by all other karban minchas, the kmitzas with the right hand, that the kaf refers to right? Says the Gemara, smalas achrina ksev, the Torah writes the word smalas another time. Later on in the parsha, and that's how this one is extra. But maybe if the Torah said the word left smallest two times, maybe that's coming to be marbe, that's coming to include, and therefore the fact that it says smallest is not necessarily going to teach me that all other Torah kaf is Yirmin, but maybe here by the oil there's an extra time. It says smallest to be marbe, that the oil could be placed in your right hand. Says the Gemara, smala achrina ksiva. It says it another time, and 3 times. Kan smallest veinacher smallest. Therefore, it teaches us only here and nowhere else. For Ektimara, how do you know? Maybe the third articulation of smallest shows us here it's smallest and everywhere it's smallest. Says the Gemara, guess what? Arba smallest ksivi. Torah says it 4 times. Trey ba'ani, trey ba'asher. 2 times by the poor mitzayra, 2 times by the wealthy mitzayra. And therefore, what does that show us? That shows us by the mitzayra, it's going to be dafka left, but everywhere else, the word kaf is going to mean right. Says the Gemara, Rav Zeira. Going a bit deeper, once we're talking about the dinam of mitzayra, Abayin Yadu Ayman is the Torah says on the mitzayra's right thumb, Abayin Ragla Aymanis, and the Torah's right big toe. Says the Gemara, why did the Torah have to say this? Why did the Torah have to say this? Why did it have to repeat it? It already said it prior. As you look at the last Rashi, the Amid Rashi articulates, Kivin d'chsev al dama Hashem itin as Hashem. I know Yadana dal Yadai Manasi. We already know that it's going to be on the right hand. Says the Gemara as we turn over to Daf Yudam and Aleph, today's Daf. Chad lahachshir stadim. I'll tell you what the extra time the Torah is telling us, the right big toe and the right thumb. Says the Gemara, you know why? Chad lahachshir stadim. V'chad lifzal sidei stadim. One is going to be machshir, the stadim, the sides of the thumb, and one is going to be pasol, the sidei stadim, which is one step more removed, which is going to be the lamata minashe, that it's going to be the bottom of the foot. Says the Gemara, 1 second, al dam asham. When the Torah says on the blood of the asham, al makaim dam asham, and on the place of the blood of the asham, lemayasu, what are they coming to include? Why do we need an extra plastic? And by the material what we have going on over here, we have the placement of the shemen, the placement of the dam. Why do we need the extra plastic? Says the Gemara, Ani tzrichi, because Rachman al dam asham hava amina. Hava amina, he's saying, if the blood is there on his right big thumb, on his right toe, then you put the oil there. Nitkaneach loi, but if it got wiped off, you cannot, because Rachmana al makam. Because Rachmana al makam hava amina, davka nitkaneach. I would have thought, if the Torah said al makam, davka nitkaneach, that the oil can be applied only after it's wiped off. Aval isei ema havi chatzitza kamash malah. And the Torah mentioned extra time al dam asham. You place the dam, you place the shemen. Even if the dam is there, even if the shemen is there, there's a din to place both of them in the same location on the bayim yadei aymanis bayim raglei aymanis. Amar Rav me'acher dichsev al dam asham v'al makim dam asham. Now the Torah says it 2 times. Uksiva, and it says 10 lines down. The first word line is yeminis, and it says yeminis bedam. So now, al bayin yadei manis avereglei manis. The fact that the Torah says on the right big thumb and the right big toe, so basically what's going on over here is trying to figure out there's many extra psukim. Because once we have that the shemen and the dam are being placed in the same place on the right thumb and the right big toe, so why do you need the Torah to articulate it again? We started off explaining on the bottom of Amud Beis that kaf means right. How do I know kaf means, and therefore what? Again, that's a global din that kamitza is done with your right hand. How do I know that? Because when it comes to placing the shemen, the oil of the mitzayram, it says kaf samailis. So that's what we know that. And that's really why we're bringing down this whole sugya. Once we brought down this whole sugya, the Gemara then wants to say, wait, who says kaf samailis is extra? It says it twice, it says it 3, it says it 4 times. Okay, now we go into the dam of the mitzayra, which also says numerous times. And the question is, why? The two are equated, the dam and the shemen. These extra mentions are not necessary. So says the Gemara, Ela my Rava yad yad likmitza, regal regal lechalitza. Says Rava, says yad 2 times to teach us the din of kimitza. Says regal 2 times to teach us the din of chalitza. That each has to be done with the right hand and the right foot. Eisen teaches us that when the Eved Ivri, if he chooses to remain an Eved, gets his ear pierced, is Liritziyah. It's in his right ear as well. So Smilis Ani Lamayasa. We have one last pasuk. Why does the Torah have to give us the extra time Smilis? So Shailav means Ani or Asher, but the extra time Smilis by the Mitzayra. Amar Rav Shisha Breder Rav Idi Livsal. Yemin dekayin b'mitzayra. You know why it says smilis to show us that klabi the mitzayra has to be dafka on the smilis, kaf smilis of the kayin, not on the right hand. Shaloi taimer, don't say my bakushal nisra b'smal, nisra b'yemin, in a place where we don't include the left. In general, avoides. We say what? But it dafka has to be done with the right. So therefore, you know what you have thought? In a place by Mitzayra, where you're also, you would have thought it's an also. You could put it in small. Then for sure, what? So the Torah had to go out of its way because you have this odd situation that the Mitzayra is indeed being allowed to place in his left hand. You have to tell me, and guess what? The left is an exclusion to the right. Because why wouldn't the right work if it always works? That's why you need the extra left. V'edach smalis, says the Gemara, l'mayasa. V'yad regel yuanusim ani l'mayal. So different girsais. L'chatani devei Rabbi Yishmael called parsha namar v'nishnis. Anytime the Torah wrote a parsha and repeated it, lo nishnis el b'shvil davar shenischadesh ba, the extra chiddush, and therefore nothing has to be learned out from this extra section by the ani of the Mitzayro who's an ani, because it's just repeating it like it's said by the Mitzayro who is an usher. Which basically means, and this is where, of course, drashas get complicated, there are times that the drasha is going to be only for it itself, and we're not going to actually be nisrabe anything more on top of it. Let's just look at Rashi for one moment. Rashi says in the first white line, or only towards the bottom of the Amud, shenischadesh ba uparshas ani nischadesh carbon I love Yerid. Meaning, the Torah has a chiddush of parshas ani. A chiddush of carbon I love Yerid, it's a variable carbon, it depends on the wealth of the person. Once the Torah needed to say that, then it says the whole parsha, even though you're not going to necessarily learn something from the fact that it repeats small. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Chanam Rav Shimon ben Lakish. Now we go global. So we started off the day trying to figure out where we know that kemitza has to be done with your right hand. We learned it out from the fact that mitzayra, the oil is placed al kaf smolis. And we got involved in a lengthy discussion of the extra psukim by mitzayra. Now says the Gemara in the middle of Yudam Aleph. Anytime but that avoidance. It says it has to be done with the etzba or with the kahuna. Einai ella yemin. It means your right hand. Says the Gemara. What does that mean? You know what Reish Lakish means? Etzba kahuna bi'inan. It means it has to be the finger and it has to be done by the kain, his right hand. The Gamar mi mitzayra, and therefore says the Gemara, we'll learn out from mitzayra that what that he dips his right finger. So what do we see? We see that both sukkim it says etzba. So Reish Lakish l'chayra is teaching me gzeira shava. That has to be the right hand. Hare kmitza. But now, when it comes to kemitza, the leksiv be'elikuna doesn't say etzba. Utinan. And what do we learn in our Mishnah as we started off today? Kamat bismol pasol. Why? Doesn't make sense. If Reish Lakish's old drasha of etzba is teaching us has to be yamin. And when it says kuna, so by us it just says kuna, doesn't say yamin, doesn't say etzba, excuse me. When it says etzba and kuna, so by us when it just says kuna, why is it small puzzle, kash and Reish Lakish, or better yet, kash on our understanding of Reish Lakish? Says the Gemara Amarava, oy etzba, oy kuna. You know what Reish Lakish means? That whenever it says either etzba or kuna, go look up. What do Reish Lakish say? Come on, remember etzba ukuna. So you got to read that vav as the proverbial oy. When it says etzba or kuna, it means the right hand. Amalei Abaye, Harei Olech Zevarim the Kevesh, Asabayo. If you're bringing the limbs of the Oila on the ramp of the Mizbeach, Tersev Kahuna, it says over there Kahuna. Tersev Ikra Vakayin Esakol Mizbecha, and the Kayin should bring it all on the Mizbeach. Ve'amar Mar Zu Olech Zevarim the Kevesh. What do we learn out from the pasuk? It says Vikra Vakayin Esakol Mizbecha. This is the bringing the limbs of the Oila to the ramp. Utanani, we learned in the Mishnah. Ha regel shal yamin bismol. Ubeis ayra lachotz. Says the Mishnah and Talmud that when we learn about the daily Talmud, that how does it work? The regel shal yamin, the right hind leg goes bismol in the left hand. Ubeis ayra, and the hide portion is bachotz, is outwards. What do we see? We see clearly that the left hand is used. So says the Gemara, even though it says kahuna, But we see that it's not only the right hand. Answers the Gemara, Ki Amri Nana Yatzva Kahuna. When do we say that either the word etzba or the word kahuna indicates it has to be with the right hand? Is bedavar hama'akev kapara, is only in parts of the avodah that part of the avodah is ma'akev the kapara. Frek the Gemara, but wait, Vari Kabbalah, which is Davar HaMakabaro, and the Kisiv Bakuna, and the Chsev Ekriva B'nei Aron Adam, Zu Kabbalah Sadam. So we see it's Makiv. We see it says what? Kuna. And now what do we see? Utanan. And yet, we learned in a Mishnah and Zvachim, Kibal Bismol Apostle, Rav Shimon Machshir. So, frag the Gemara, what do we see? We see, even though it says Kuna, even though we see it's in Ma'akev, still it does not have to be done with the right hand. Answers the Gemara, Rav Shimon Kamrid, you're asking a kasha on Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon Tarti Boi, meaning, according to the Tanakama, it's puzzle that's Gevaldik, it's Makiv, because why it says Kuna has to be with the right hand. So you're asking me, according to Rav Shimon, how is it kosher? Rav Shimon Tarti Boi. Rav Shimon learns that it's only if it says Kahuna and Etzba. Correct, the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom. Really? Yomei by Rav Shimon Tarti, Vatan, learned to the price of Shimon Omer. Kol Makshem Yadin El Yamin. Anytime it says Yad, it means the right. Etzba, when it says finger in El Yamin. Etzba. So what do we see? We see Rav Shimon doesn't hold that way. Answers Gemara, Etzba loy ba'i kuna. That when it says Etzba, doesn't have to say Kahuna, but Kahuna ba'i Etzba. Frakti Gemara Elokai and Lamali, but if this is true, if the word Etzba by itself is enough, so why did the pasuk say Kayin with regard to the Kabbalah Saddam? Says the Gemara, Big Kahuna doesn't mean the regular, it means while they're wearing their Kahuna, while they're wearing their big day Kahuna. Frak the Gemara Vayter, as we turn over to Yudamid Beis. The Hare Zrika. What about the Zrika Sadam? To look Seve Ela Kahuna. It only says Kahuna, and yet what do we know? And of course it's Ma'akev Utanan Zarg Bismol. Pasov Loipalig Rebbe Shemin. So what do we see? So the fact that it's possible to smell is Gevaldik, according to our rules. Why? Because it is an Ikra Avoida, so it has to be Biyamin. But why over here, if, according to Rav Shimon, it's not enough, and the word Etzba by itself is yes enough, so why, according to Rav Shimon, is it going to be possible? It would seem that Rav Shimon would be maskim that by the Zrika, even though the like Sivei Ela Kahuna just says Kahuna, it's enough to teach that to be Biyamin. Amar Abaye, Balig Bibraisa. Guess what? No, Rav Shimon does argue. In the Mishnah, he didn't argue. There's a Braisa that he argued. The Tanya, Kibel Bismol, Pasul. Rav Shimon holds if it was the Kabbalah Bismol, it's going to be Pasul. Rav Shimon Machshir. There it is. Says the Gemara, let's go weiter. We're middle of figuring out right and left hand. The sheet of the Rabbanan, the Tanakama, that argues on Rav Shimon, taught us in the bottom of Amud Aleph, either Oy Kahuna, Oy Etzba, shows us it has to be the right hand. Rav Shimon Machshir. Rav Shimon Machshir. Zark Bismol Pasal. Excuse me, I didn't finish in the Braisa. Rav Shimon Machshir. Now says the Gemara, Rava, that which Rava said, yad yad, the kemitza lamali. That which Rava said, yad yad, they have to use your right hand for kemitza. Why do we need Xera Shava? We learned this back on Amid Aleph. Mikona nafkush, be enough that it says kuna. Explains the Gemara. Chalekaimetz, bechad. L'kiddush chaimetz is 2 different parts of the avodah. There's the chaimetz itself, the 3 fingers that has to be taken with the right hand, and then there's the kiddush chaimetz, the placing it into the kli shares that has to also be done with the right hand. Frak Gemara Rav Shimon deloy ba'i kiddush chaimetz. Rav Shimon argues that you don't need kiddush chaimetz, and ulaman da'amar na'am either ba'i kiddush chaimetz. The Rav Shimon, according to Mandarma, that you do need Kiddush Karban because Rav Shimon, but ubismal achshiri machshir. Rav Shimon holds if it's done with the left hand, it's kosher. So then, Yad Yad Rav Alamali, what do we think? Zera Shava of Yad Yad Ili Kamitza Gufa. I'll leave the Rav Shimon, the Rav Yehuda, the Rav Chia Nafka. That what do we see according to that you have a makar for the Kamitza Biyamin? Rav Shimon with Rav Yehuda Damar. Rav Yehuda Braid Rav Chia. My time of the Rav Shimon Damar Kra. Kodesh Kodashim Ikachatos Vikasham. Says the Torah, it's Kodesh Kodesh like the Chatzos and Hasham. Balav de Biyad. From here we learn out if he comes to do a Biyad, it has to be of the Biyamin. Kechatos. Balav de Bikli. Then of the Bismal. Ke'asham. But what do we see? We see from the fact that the chatos is like the minchos like the chatos. So we see that l'chayra, we have a makar, the kamitza has to be done with the right hand. So according to this opinion within Shitas Rav Shimon, why does Rava need the Gzeir Shava? Yad Yad explains the Gemara. 5 lines from the bottom. You know why? Lo nitzracha ela lekaimetz de minchas choite. A very specific case. We need it for the kemitza of the minchas choite. That what? Sal kedai techamin over there. I would have thought. Oh, you'll sit. Ve'amar Rav Shimon. 3 lines in the bottom. We just learned this, that since it's a chayte, you're bringing the carbon because you didn't have Eira. So Shimon said, we don't want the carbon to be mehudar, beautiful. So you know what you would have also thought? Nami. So when you do the kemitza, it shouldn't be beautiful. So it should be a shvacha kemitza. So I would have thought, Bismalt, it's kasher. Kamash Milan, therefore we need extra drasha to teach us that no, excuse me, it has to be biyamin. Let's go Javaiter. Kamatval biyadei srar. I gargar melech. Said the Mishnah, if you did the kmitza and you have a rack or a bissel salt in your hand. Oh, as we turn over to Yudalef and base tomorrow's daf. You know what came up in your hand? A quart levaina, a piece of levaina. What's the halacha? It is possible. So the Mishnah listed numerous cases: asrar, melach, quart levaina. So in classical sense, we'll just do one shtickle. Says the Gemara, Kol ani lamali tzricha. Titan et sar. I would have thought Mishnah lavas akravi. Avo melach lavas akravi. But salt, which is an entity that is brought on the mizbeach, which actually is right after the kemitza. As Rashi says, they would salt it. So ematit kasher v'itana melach. Doesn't go together with the mincha meikara. It was kava. It was fixed together with the mincha in the beginning. Ematit kasher. Kamash Malan, that's why the Mishnah lists all 3 cases. Pick it up from here, B'siyata Dishmaya.